I came to America searching for a new beginning, a new job, a new life, a new version of myself. But what I found was a voice behind a wall. He spoke to me on the nights I cried, listened when no one else did. I never saw his face, never touched his hand, but somehow I knew him, felt him. And in that quiet apartment in Portland, I fell in love with someone who wasn't supposed to exist. My name is Selma, and this is my strange love story. I still remember the day I landed in Portland. Rain kissed the plane windows as if welcoming me with a soft warning. This place is gentle, but it remembers. I'm Jordanian, born and raised in Amman. I came to the US for a job, something I never imagined I'd say. After graduating with a degree in tourism and cultural heritage, I was offered a position at an eco-travel agency in Oregon that specialized in Middle Eastern experiences. It felt like fate. I packed my life into 2 suitcases and moved halfway across the world. I rented a modest 1-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of an old red brick building downtown, the kind with creaky stairs and noisy plumbing. But it had character. And more importantly, it had peace. Or so I thought. It started one night, after a long, lonely call with my mother. I missed her so much. After ending the call, I wondered what I am doing here. I left everything behind in my country and walked straight into the unknown. A wave of fear and loneliness washed over me. I cried. Not loudly, just that quiet, aching kind of cry that lives behind the ribs. I was sitting on the floor, wrapped in a blanket, leaning against the wall that separated my apartment from the one next door. That's when I heard it. A voice. Gentle male. Not loud, but just enough to reach me through the plaster and paint. "Are you okay?" I froze. My heart skipped. "Sorry, I just heard you crying. Didn't mean to scare you." I didn't reply. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But the next night, I cried again and the voice returned. You know, crying helps, but sometimes talking helps more. That night, I replied. I said, "It's my first week here. I don't really know anyone." "Well, now you do," he said. Days turned into weeks. We never exchanged names. We never met. But we spoke every night through that wall. He told me about his love for books, especially Russian novels. I told him about Petra and the Dead Sea, and how I missed the smell of cardamom in coffee. He had a soft laugh. It made the apartment feel less empty. I started rushing home after work just to lean against that wall and wait for his voice. One night, I asked, "Why haven't we met yet?" He paused. "I don't want to ruin it." I didn't understand, but I didn't push. We shared everything, without faces, without pressure. And somehow, I fell. Not in the usual way. I fell for a voice, for a soul without a body. Then, one day, the voice disappeared. I waited. I cried again. Nothing. A week passed, then 2. Finally, I knocked on the neighbor's door. No answer. The landlord, an old woman named Judith, noticed me lingering and asked if I needed help. I said, "I'm just trying to check on the guy who lives next door." She looked at me strangely. "Honey, no one's lived there for months, not since the accident." I asked, What accident? Young man. Lived alone. Quiet type. Died in a car crash last October. October? That was the same month I arrived. I didn't sleep that night. I sat against the wall, like always, waiting for a voice I knew wouldn't return. I whispered, "I miss you." Then added softly, "Whoever you were." I couldn't sleep, counting the minutes, the hours, waiting for the sun to rise. I couldn't wait another second. I rushed to Mrs. Judith's apartment. She opened the door. "Honey, are you all right?" I looked at her with desperate eyes. "Mrs. Judith, please, I need to go inside the apartment." "The apartment?" she asked. I said, 43. I couldn't hold back. Tears started to stream down my face uncontrollably as Mrs. Judith stared at me, torn between concern and confusion. She then gently said, "All right, follow me, dear." I followed her with heavy steps and a heart pounding so loud it felt like it would burst from my chest. The longing inside me was unbearable. Maybe I just needed to see the place to prove that the voice, that he, was real, that it wasn't just a dream. She unlocked the door, and the moment it opened, a soft breeze swept through me. "His name was Adam," she said quietly. I took a deep breath and steps inside. When I stepped into Adam's apartment, a strange stillness wrapped around me. Not cold, not empty, but paused, like a breath held too long. The light filtered in through the dusty curtains, painting the room in soft golden grief. Everything was simple. A bookshelf with worn-out spines, a ceramic mug on the table, half full with silence. A black coat hanging by the door, still waiting, still loyal. I stood in the center of the room, my hands trembling, my chest tight, as if the air itself remembered him. I had never seen his face, never touched his skin, but in that moment, I knew him. How could someone who was gone make me feel more seen than anyone ever had? I found his photo on the nightstand. His smile, quiet, not posed. Eyes that seemed to look through the camera, not at it. Blue eyes I'd never seen in real life. My fingers trembled as I held it. I whispered, "Adam." And something inside me cracked open. I sat on the bed. The mattress still held a dip where his weight once was. The pillow still soft, still shaped by his sleep, still warm in memory. I leaned in slowly, afraid of the moment, but more afraid to lose it. And there it was, his scent, still there, still him. Tears came, but I didn't stop them, because in that moment, through scent, through silence, he was real. Not just a voice behind a wall, not just a ghost. He was mine, and I had found him, even if too late. The sun had begun to set, casting long amber streaks across the floor. The room no longer felt haunted. It felt held, like something sacred had been shared here. I had wandered through this place like someone searching for pieces of a dream, and somehow I had found them. But now it was time to go. My eyes scanned the space one last time. The bookshelf, the worn mug, the photo. It was his world, and for a moment, I had lived in it. The air felt still, but not empty, almost grateful. I walked to the door, opened it slowly, And just before stepping out, I turned around, smiled, and whispered into the quiet, "Goodbye, Adam." That winter, I resigned from my job and packed my things. Portland had given me something I could never explain and something I could never hold. I returned to Amman. But sometimes, when the world is quiet, when rain taps softly on my windows, I sit beside the wall of my bedroom and wait, just in case that voice ever finds its way back. So even if no one would believe this story, even if the world never saw him, I did. And I left a part of me with him, forever.
They say when a soul lingers, it's because something unfinished still holds it. I wasn't looking for peace. I didn't ask for love, but when she cried, I answered. She never saw my face. We never met. But through an old apartment wall in Portland, I loved her, even from the other side of life. My name is Adam, and this is my supernatural love story. I don't know why I'm still here. They say when you die, you move on, you find peace, you vanish. But I didn't. I stayed. Not in the way people imagine, with chains or cold winds or flickering lights. I stayed in silence, in shadow, in memory. I lived in apartment 43, and I died on a rainy October night, 3 blocks away from this place. But something of me remained between these walls in the quiet. I didn't speak, not for a long time, until she arrived. She cried softly, the kind of cry that you only let out when you think no one is listening. But I was. Her sobs echoed through the wall like waves against my silence. I didn't mean to speak, but I did. "Are you okay?" She froze. I felt it. "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you." I thought she'd run, call someone, move out. But she didn't. The next night she cried again, and I spoke again. Talking helps, you know. She answered. Her voice was warm, tired, foreign but soft. She came from far away, a place called Amman. She missed her home, missed her mother, missed silence that wasn't empty. I didn't tell her who I was, what I was. Every night I waited for her voice. She leaned against the same wall I did. We spoke about things I hadn't spoken of in years. Books, music, what it means to be alone. I told her I liked the rain. She told me about the sun. She told me about Petra. She made this cold place feel warm again. Sometimes I forgot that I was no longer part of the world. She asked once why we hadn't met. I said, because I don't want to ruin this. How could I explain? That I wasn't behind a door. I was behind a memory. The night I knew she had fallen for me was the same night I felt the pull, the call to leave. She leaned against the wall longer than usual. Her breathing was soft, her voice uncertain. I think I might be falling for you. And my heart, if it still existed, broke. Because I felt it too. But I couldn't give her anything. Not a face, not a future, not even a name. So I disappeared. I let the silence grow. She knocked on my door the next week. She called out, "Are you there?" But I stayed quiet. Because sometimes love means stepping back, even from behind a wall. She spoke to the landlord. I listened from behind the paint and wood.
No one's lived there since the accident,
the old woman said. And that was the first time she knew that I had died. And yet, somehow, I had stayed for her. That night, she sat by the wall and whispered, "I miss you." And I whispered back, not with words, but with warmth, with a breeze that brushed her cheek. She smiled through tears. I heard her footsteps pass through the door, and there I was, face to face with her. She entered slowly, like a memory that had finally found its way home. I stood in the corner, not in body but in presence, the way shadows linger even after the light has changed. She looked around like someone trying to read a language she once knew. Her eyes landed on the bookshelf, the coat still hanging, the mug I never had the chance to wash. And then she stopped, right at the edge of the bed. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She sat gently, fingers tracing the edge of my pillow, like she was afraid to wake the ghost of a dream. I wanted to speak, to tell her she was real, that she was more than just a voice I found in the dark. But the air between us held no words, only silence thick with goodbye. She picked up my photo. I saw her tears before they fell. Adam. And in that moment, I felt the final string holding me here loosen. She had come. She had seen me. And that was enough. I stepped closer, my presence barely a whisper in the room. I wished I could touch her hand, brush that tear from her cheek. But all I could give her was warmth, a shift in the air, a final breeze across her skin. She closed her eyes, smiled and whispered into the quiet, "Goodbye, Adam." She said it like she saw me, standing there, wordless, unseen, and one last look that broke what was left of me and freed me.